It's Wild West Exodus 2nd edition week here on Beasts of War, and we have some amazing prizes up for grabs. We have no less than 10 sets to give away, which include everything you need to play the game. Winners will be able to choose between the Warrior Nation, Lawman, Enlightened, Union or Outlaw sets for their prize. Get your comments in on all of the Wild West Exodus content this week on beastsofwar.com, YouTube or Facebook for your chance to win. Winners are announced in a future episode of The Weekender, so stay tuned. Hi everybody, welcome back to Wild West Exodus week here on Beasts of War. I am joined by Chris and Stu, and today we are talking Outlaws. So, these are the guys who are basically saying, I don't care what the law says, I'm doing what I want.
They are very, very naughty boys.
Oh, that accent for that saying, beautiful.
It's not how I picture the Desperate Frontier, but there you go. Outlaws. So Outlaws tend to do what they do mainly for money. They also it's really for power, be it for information, money, a debt, a promise, whatever it is. That's what motivates the Outlaws. The Outlaws are the most diverse of all the factions. Mm-hmm. Really, they're like lots of mini factions or lots of themed groups all together. Mm-hmm. They're characterized by very characterful groupings, really charismatic leaders, and a really interesting mix of play styles.
All right, so who would be in this rogues gallery, if you will, then?
Well, okay, so I think probably first of all we need to explain how the Outlaws work. So you can take the Outlaws as a normal faction as you would anybody else, where it's comprised of one or more outlaw bosses with their particular posses, and you make your army that way. But there is another way that you can use them.
There is. You can take them as part of an army for most of the other factions. So you can have your enlightened posse, right, and you can chuck some outlaws in there. Ooh. As long as you then take another enlightened posse, you could put a second outlaw posse in there as well. So
I see. So you have to keep it balanced.
Yes.
And could I take... Right, say I had taken 2 enlightened posses.
Yep.
You take 2 outlaw posses. Mm-hmm. Could I take one subset outlaws? So say Jesse James original style outlaws and Stonewall Jackson Confederate style outlaws?
That would in fact work very, very well.
Yeah. Really?
Yes.
Ooh.
But you would, in fact, you talk about these subgroups. Unlike whereas all the other factions, you have a faction posse, which is your kind of your generic or your standard way that the faction behaves, and any one of the bosses can take that the boss slot in there, and then you build up your posse around that. Outlaws aren't like that. Outlaws don't have a generic posse. They only have their theme posses that they take. So
can you mix and match those as much as you want?
Yes, but so within an outlaw army, you can have any outlaw boss and their themed posse. You can combine all those together. That's no problem. Each themed posse, though, will specify what other factions they will work for. So you can't just take them for anyone, because some bosses, because they're character driven, it's a narrative game, some bosses will have maybe a natural allegiance to certain factions, but other factions they will have nothing to do with.
So I wouldn't expect to see an outlaw Confederate posse in with some Union.
No. So Stonewall Jackson can't ally with the Union. That would be a safe guess.
Yeah. I'll take the safe bet every time when I'm on camera.
So you kind of your the mainstay that you'll see in a lot of the outlaw posses are these guys. So which is your standard bandits and things. Mm-hmm. And they come in all sorts of bandits and raiders. They come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Usually, like with most things, there's and you find this with any army that you collect, where the models and the range is very diverse. It's probably best from a painting point of view to maybe pick a unifying colour or something like that. I mean, in our example artwork, we've used red for the bandanas, for the neck chiefs. Mm-hmm. You might want to then make sure, even if you have these different themed posses in your outlaw army, you might want to have maybe as red as a unifying linking colour for them, or if that was what you wanted to do, it might be or green, or it might be that you do your metal work in a certain way, or what have you.
Yeah, so just something to actually tie everybody together, because say you actually come up, say Outlaw versus Outlaw, Having just that one little change, it gives you a very readable way to actually see what's happening on the tabletop.
Yeah, and all the other factions, because they come from a common central position, they have unifying technology, or they have unifying uniforms, or exactly. The Outlaws don't have any of that. Their technology and stuff comes from all sorts of different places. Their equipment and their appearance is as diverse as they are. So you can have radically different looking posses allied together. From a modelling or from a painting point of view. It could be a basing or something like that, but you're going to want to think about that a little bit more as to how to have them unified, or you take them, as Chris has mentioned, and you actually collect a different faction, and you can take one of those outlaw posses. Exactly. The choice is yours. But let's look at some of the bosses. So the probably most famous of the outlaw bosses is this chap. This is Jesse James. So Jesse James was a Confederate during the Civil War, but he's now found his own way in the world. He's now he's forging his own destiny. For him, that's what he felt that it was that the Civil War was about. So he's not so much of a champion for that cause. He's now more about his own personal beliefs and what he thinks is right. But he is a Confederate, so he does have the Confederate trait. And so if you were trying to put together or finding a narrative reason for putting certain outlaw groups together, that might be one, that they might all have a common Confederate background or something like that.
Now, there's a question. With the groups being so diverse within the Outlaws, those subsets, are there any of them, like say Jesse James, is there anybody within the Outlaw faction who he wouldn't really work with, or will he work with anybody?
The way that the Outlaws work, they will all work with each other for a very brief period of time, and usually probably about the duration of a battle, because it's for these aren't an outlaw army isn't like a long-term commitment. It is a commitment for a particular objective for the game, or a particular battle, or a particular maybe even the alliance doesn't last more than the afternoon. You can imagine that at the end of the battle, the very first thing that happens is that your bosses, your various outlaw bosses, are then keeping an eye on each other to make sure, waiting for one to double cross the other.
So you're getting to that Mexican standoff moment.
It is an. In fact, funnily enough, it is an alliance of convenience. But speaking of Mexican standoffs, one of the key outlaws is Pancho Villa, who is he has his own vision. Now he is fighting for a cause. He can see this bold, brilliant future for the Mexican people, with him absolutely at the head of it. He has this. There was a prophecy, and it talked about a child of very poor background who grew up in a particular area. And who would then lead a golden army to this great future. Pancho Villa doesn't let a little thing. Okay, so the town or the area wasn't exactly where he came from, but it was fairly close. And he doesn't have a golden army. So what he's done is he's named his followers the Golden Army. So he's one of these. Pancho, he's one of these guys that he will make prophecy fit him if he doesn't quite fit the prophecy. So he's again, it's that very charismatic, very driven individuals are the kind of bosses that we have. So he's fantastic. He's he's funny. He's courageous. He's supremely arrogant. But yeah, what more?
That kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah. What more do you want out of your leader of your banditos, as it were? So yeah, he's a cracking outlaw boss, and I can see Pancho Villa and Jesse James temporarily having an alliance in order to achieve a certain thing. Maybe they're robbing somewhere, or they're attacking an oncoming Union army, or what have you. There's lots of reasons why they would temporarily ally with each other.
And gameplay-wise for these two guys so far, is there big differences between how their two sort of subsets work?
Well, those two posses definitely, because you've got Pancho Villa has loads and loads of very cheap hired hands, and Jesse James has, again, it's more of the
better equipped ones.
Yeah. So, although they have got outlaws, he's also got quite a lot of faces as well. You know, these outlaws he can call in to assist him with the various jobs that he has to do.
Yeah, Pancho Villa is basically, for his army, you'd have Pancho Villa and a couple of men and women that are within his inner circle, and then it's masses and masses and masses of basically Mexicans, disenfranchised Mexicans who have come with him from Mexico and have followed him up on his great plan. They're grouped into either riflemen or pistoliers and things, and they're a bit like the. Funny enough, the lawmen with their deputies, where they're basically gone to somebody and given them some equipment, given them a uniform. Well, Pancho doesn't do that. He doesn't give them a uniform, but he's filled them full of all this kind of this hope and this vision that he has. He's a very charismatic man, and so you've got these essentially farmers with guns who we'll follow you, Pancho, and away they go on some crazy crusade halfway up the country.
Money, glory, you say? I'm in.
Yeah, that doesn't matter. I've got no skill. It doesn't matter. I've never seen a military engagement before. Yeah, let's do it. Let's go. and it's okay because there's like 30 other guys behind me. So your outlaw posse with Pancho Villa and his Golden Army, you're going to see a large mobs of very, very basic troops.
Okay, fair enough. Who else do we have in the faction?
Complete opposite to that, you'd have somebody, again, another former Confederate turned independent operative. You have Marcus Wayward. Yeah. So Marcus Wayward doesn't have legion upon legion of expendable Mexicans at his command. Yes. Instead, he has 8 or about 7 other people that he almost draws together as like a family. So he has his gang, his posse called the Wayward Eight. Yeah. And they're a very, very tight-knit group, and they will carry out jobs, but each one of them is a face, so each one of them is a character. So the strengths are that you've got this core of really skillful faces that have all that synergy and that interplay working together. The drawback is they don't have...
You have 8 guys.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have all these other... you don't have all these expendable people with you as well.
No cannon fodder.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you see, I always find the Marcus Wayward an interesting one to actually play a game where it's so elite to have so few models on the tabletop. I find that it makes for an interesting game, but if you're going to play that, you really, really need to know what you're up to. You need to know all the special rules, know where the synergies are, and know when to actually play those bonus cards to get the faces activating and chaining.
Yeah, one of the things that you can find though is that you have a really wide range of skills. So I mean, I'll give you one of the faces. So one of the members of the Wayward Eight would be River Flowing. So River Flowing is her background. She's a really interesting background. So she is actually a cerulean mimic who is masquerading as a warrior nation. Well, in fact, she's not masquerading anymore because she's mimicked that person for so long that effectively, to all intents and purposes, she is River Flowing. But you can see some of her alien physiology starting to come through because she's been like that for so long.
And some alien-esque sort of touches to the weaponry and stuff as
well.
well.
So she's an outcast from... I mean, obviously the warrior nation wouldn't consider her their own. If she was to ever go back to the Watchers would make her revert back to her natural form. And she doesn't want to do that because if she turns back into a cerulean and if effectively resets back to her factory setting, as it were, everything because they're telepathic, the ceruleans, all the memories and all of her being of River Flowing will be lost. And because the original River Flowing is dead, if she does change back, River Flowing is gone, and she likes being River Flowing, so consequently she can't go back to the Watchers either. So she's an outcast, which is right up Marcus Wayward's street. He seems to collect broken people and gather them into a big family.
You see, now I don't know if saying this is going to sound right, but it actually humanizes this character a lot. Even though she is an alien, there's a human aspect there with her going native almost to actually say, no, I actually just want to be human. Yeah. It's very, very cool, very different.
Yeah, so there's... And she's just one of, and obviously there are 6 others within the posse.
Of course.
A different type of posse, but similar kind of idea in terms of you have a character and some faces and you don't have lots of expendable troops, would be Earl Shepherd. So Earl Shepherd is the boss of the Deadly Seven. He actually has a bit of a backstory with the Wayward Eight. There is some back history with them. Whereas the Wayward Eight tend to pick, they will serve, or not serve, but they will fight for a cause. The Deadly Seven, okay, if it is a cause that occasionally that'll win them round, but they're much more mercenary. They're kind of
money oriented.
Yeah, they're harder nosed. They will take the dirtier, more violent jobs than the Wayward Eight would.
Yeah.
And again, just like the Wayward Eight, you've got a really interesting mix of characters. You've got one of my absolute favourites, which is Faraday, who was a Civil War automaton who developed sort of sentience and decided he didn't want to be made scrapped and made obsolete. So let's murder the meatbags and let's go find my own way in the world. So he's out there as part of the Deadly Seven.
Yeah.
One of the fierce women who didn't fall under the sway of Pancho Villa is Edina Vanez. She has her own. She's very proud, very clear in her own mind as to what she wants, and she's not going to let anyone, or certainly no man, stand in her way. So she's quite ferocious.
And is she a face or a boss?
She's a face. These are all faces.
Okay.
These are all faces within the Deadly Seven. This is the great thing about some of these types of posses. You'll get these really strong characters, these faces that are, and really the difference between a face and a boss is a game distinction rather than a in the world. Vanez or Black Blood, as we've got here, he doesn't sit there going, "Yeah, I'm just a face, though, aren't I?" It's Earl Shepherd that's the boss, so I'll just, they're all the star of their own story, kind of thing. But so Black Blood again is an outcast from the warrior nation. He was, as a child, he was scalped by European settlers, and that has made him, that has kind of hardened him and made him incredibly angry. So again, his spirit weapon, as you can see, his spirit bow there is fueled by his own hatred, his own anger. Yeah,
I'm seeing that red elemental energy coming through here. I'm wondering if there's a little bit of taint in there.
There is the danger, isn't there, when that kind of thing can happen? Yes, and not only that, yes, he has this incredible gift, but he uses it to kill. He uses it to hunt. So I mean, he will fire those spirit arrows, and they'll go around corners. They'll knock on doors, wait for people to open them. Yeah, it's not. He's not a great one to get on the wrong side of. So you've got those kind of people in there. We talked a bit about Jesse James and the Confederates. Another boss would be Stonewall Jackson. So Stonewall Jackson was a big Civil War general. The Confederates lost. He was mortally injured at the end of or just before the Civil War ended. And when he recovered and when he returned, the war was over. He believes that the war can still be won, that there is a military victory as possible, but he's a realist and he understands he doesn't have an army anymore. He has a die-hard band of followers, so he's adjusted his tactics and he now operates more of a guerrilla war. So because, I mean, he's an outlaw in the sense of he and his followers are wanted men. What they're doing is completely illegal. They're hunted by the Union, they're hunted by the lawmen. He's had to make deals with the Enlightened. He even does jobs for the Hex if necessary. He will do whatever is necessary to achieve that military victory that he feels was robbed from him at the end of the Civil War. He's a phenomenal strategist. He's a in terms of the different strengths that they have. If you had Stonewall Jackson, if you took him and his posse, you would have that visionary strategist and that great military leader. And obviously he's worked it out that his best way of achieving what he wants to now is in this slightly adapted style of warfare. Yeah,
and it does look as if he's lost an arm there, so I'm guessing he's had some modification done there.
Yeah, that was the work of one of the Lords of the Enlightened, a chap called Carl the Black, saved his life. Unfortunately, it has meant, because he's had that work done to him, and that's RJ pumping through him, unfortunately he's tainted now. And it's only his indomitable will that kind of keeps him driven and focused. But it is eating away at him. So how long he will stay as he is, we don't know.
I mean, it's sounding like a very synergy heavy sort of force. Because as you start to grow your games and get to bigger games, you're going to want to take multiple posses. So you're going to have to think with this faction really about how those different subsets that you're building are going to sort of mesh together to become cogs in the machine of your army.
Yes.
So that's going to be really interesting to see on the tabletop to actually see what kind of cool stuff people come up with.
Yeah, but also the theme is key, and as Stuart said, every posse is a theme posse. So you've got some real good opportunities to tell some incredible stories on the tabletop with these guys. And if someone is not sure what faction to take, or if they're not sure what play style, then Outlaws is great because it gives you so many options, so much variety, and you can just keep picking up posse boxes and building a big army.
That and they get cowboys on jetpacks. Who doesn't like cowboys on jetpacks?
Well, yeah, I mean, as a great example of what Chris is talking about, there's just two more bosses I'd like to show. So the Outlaws is a great way to have a taster of another faction. So, for example, one of the forthcoming factions that it's in the background, but the faction as a whole isn't out until next year, will be the Crown. But the Crown, there is a Crown boss who is who can be taken as Outlaws. So this is Nimue. This is in her legendary form. Now, she is a Crown boss. She can be taken as an Outlaw boss, and what it means with her is that that enables you to take her and take some of the units that kind of give you that little bit of flavour of like the Nautilus, which is her particular posse and what she gets up to. So it allows you to kind of have a little taste of it, see if that's something that you enjoy without having to necessarily commit to. Okay, I'm going to go all in on a potential Crown army, and you can get also you can give it a go because a Crown have a different play style as all of the factions do. So there's a particular way that the Crown plays which is different to the others, and Nimue gives you that a taste of that, which is quite good.
I like this idea. It sounds very, very cool.
Plus, if you take her in her Outlaw form, it means you can bring her husband along, because Broad Arrow Jack, he doesn't normally he doesn't turn up with the Crown. He and the Crown don't get on particularly well, but as an Outlaw, he's kind of like he's your dashing rugged hero of the frontier. It's one of the opportunities for you to take Broad Arrow and Nimue in the same posse together, which is a great thing.
Oh, do they have good synergies together?
They do both off game and in game. Yeah, it's
okay.
They're interesting. The backstory between them, the narrative between them is really interesting as well. Great combination. The last one to just to mention would be again another boss who is is originally from another faction and gives you a taste of that faction, which is Cain. So Cain was formerly of the Enlightened. However, Cain made a misjudgment. So Cain is the nephew of Carpathian.
Okay.
Cain made the misjudgment, though, of he saw how Carpathian was lord or father of the Enlightened, and he believed that actually if he replaced Carpathian, he could become lord of the Enlightened as well.
Right.
He fundamentally misunderstood that actually Carpathian is only the figurehead of the Enlightened because the other lords and ladies of the Enlightened allow that to happen, not because he has any kind of real control over them as such. And there are some important things that Carpathian, some secrets Carpathian has, which would go to the grave with him. He didn't understand that. He maybe a bit of inexperience, his youth, and also he had something to prove. So he murdered Carpathian and stood as leader of the Enlightened. That was great. He murdered Carpathian in a big symposia and declared himself lord. The lords and ladies of the Enlightened, okay, yep, that's fine. They went back to their Promethean forges, their complexes, and began to plan on how they were going to get rid of him. So it lasted as long as it took the lords and ladies of the Enlightened to build Carpathian, reanimate Carpathian, bring him back to life in a large monstrosity. Carpathian then reasserted himself as the figurehead, and Cain was
I'll assume he went, oh crap.
He did. Because of the love he has for his wife, Carpathian couldn't kill Cain. He couldn't bring himself to kill Cain because essentially part of his wife is
living on through him.
He's living on in Cain. So instead, he exiled him. He banished him from the Enlightened. Cain, what Cain has brought to it, in addition to being kind of young, a brilliant, absolutely brilliant engineer. Cain has also, though, developed flight is his thing. In fact, he renamed himself Cain, which is a demon of flight. What he's developed a particular kind of construct called a Hellion, which is basically a flying minion kind of thing with big mechanical wings, which are cool. The difference is, though, that Cain has the way to create Hellions from living creatures, from living people. All of the other Hellion that serve the Enlightened are all made from the dead. Right. So Hellion within the Enlightened don't last very long. They're not particularly durable.
Decomposing.
Whereas Cain's Hellion are very much living, vibrant creatures. So he now lives out in the deserts of Arizona. And on the spires and things, he's got various nests and things where his Hellion will perch and wait for the next raid that they can make on a settlement or a wagon to get more resource and things for the day that Cain can then return and attack the Enlightened once more.
Right. This seems like a bad idea. At the get-go, this seems like a bad idea.
I don't know. It depends on if he gets enough money, he can hire enough outlaws and things, and who knows what that's going to look like.
I suppose. Well, the Outlaws sound like a very interesting faction. They have their own feel and flavour, and if you're looking for that sort of taster of a faction that you're maybe thinking of getting into, like you said, guys, this could be the one for you. So everybody, get your comments in below. Do the Outlaws sound like the faction for you? We will move on. We will see you in the next one. Hi everyone, we hope you're enjoying this themed week. Make sure you don't miss any of it by checking out the playlist, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button to ding our dong so you don't miss any of our videos. Also, come across and join us on beastsofwar.com for more great gaming content and a fantastic community. Also, get your comments in for your chance to win.